Today, we're diving deep into one of the most urgent and overlooked challenges facing the United States and the global economy. The U.S. national debt. It's not just about numbers, it's about your future, your security, and your power as a citizen.
If you've ever wondered how a country like America ends up owing trillions, or what that means for you and the rest of the world, you're in the right place. Let's break it down together. Ladies and gentlemen, have you ever asked yourself, does the United States actually have debt? And if so, how much is it? And maybe the most uncomfortable question of all, will we ever pay it off? These aren't just hypothetical questions. They speak to the very heart of the U.S. economy and its future. The answers, as you might expect, are not simple, but they are incredibly important. So let's take a deep dive into this issue today, not just to recite figures or quote economic theory, but to really understand how we got here, what it means, and where we might be headed. As of 2025, the national debt of the United States sits at $36.9 trillion. That's a trillion with a T. To put that in perspective, if you were to spend $1 million every single day, it would take you nearly 100,000 years to reach just 36 trillion. And that's without interest. Now, let's look at it from another angle. The US population is currently around 340 million people. If we divide the debt equally among every citizen, man, woman, and child, that's over $100,000 per person, and that's just federal debt. If you factor in household, corporate, and state-level debts, the picture becomes even more intense. But here's the key point. The shocking part isn't just the number itself, it's the trend, the direction in which it's headed. In the year 2001, the United States ran a budget surplus. That means we actually made more money than we spent. Specifically, about $130 billion more. That was the last time we saw black ink on the national balance sheet. Since then, the US government has run a deficit every single year. Even if you remove the extraordinary pandemic-era spending of 2020 and 2021, the trend is crystal clear. We're spending more than we earn, consistently and in increasing amounts. Back in 2001, the national debt was around $10 trillion. In just over 2 decades, it has more than tripled. And not only are we adding debt, but we're doing it faster than ever. The Congressional Budget Office has projected that within the next 10 years, this situation will worsen, not improve. Think about that. Even our best economic minds are saying that unless something changes, we'll be deeper in the hole in 2035 than we are today. At this point, a fair question might be, how does a country, even one as powerful as the United States, get into this kind of situation? The answer, surprisingly, is simple. A country goes into debt, just like a person does, by spending more than it earns. Let's imagine a person who earns $3,000 a month, but spends $4,000. To make up the difference, they borrow $1,000. If they do this every month, they accumulate debt. That's exactly what the US government has been doing at a national scale. Each year, when tax revenue doesn't cover all federal spending, the government issues bonds to borrow the rest. These are essentially IOUs, promises to repay lenders with interest in the future. These bonds are sold to a wide range of buyers, individuals, corporations, and notably foreign governments. Japan, China, and the United Kingdom are among the largest foreign holders of US government debt. They buy our bonds because the US has always been seen as a safe investment. But what happens if that perception begins to shift? Now, here's where it gets even more interesting and controversial. When the government needs more money and investors aren't buying enough bonds, the Federal Reserve can step in. The Federal Reserve, as you know, is the U.S. central bank. One of its tools is to purchase government bonds, effectively creating money out of thin air to inject into the economy. This process, known as quantitative easing, is both powerful and dangerous. While it can stabilize financial markets in times of crisis, it also adds to inflation, devalues the currency, and increases the long-term burden of debt. Think of it like watering down soup. If you keep adding water, eventually there's no flavor left, just liquid. That's the risk with money printing. If done too frequently, it undermines trust in the currency. Let's take a closer look at the federal budget to understand what we're actually spending on. In the current fiscal year, the government has earned approximately $3.29 trillion. It has spent about $4.5 trillion. That's a $1.2 trillion deficit, and we're only partway through the year. So where is the money coming from? 51.7% comes from individual income taxes, 34.2% from Social Security and Medicare taxes, 9.4% from corporate taxes. The remaining amounts come from excise taxes, customs duties, and other minor sources. Now, where is it all going? 21% is spent on Social Security, 14% on Medicare, 13% on interest payments for existing debt, 13% on healthcare, excluding Medicare, 13% on defense, 11% on income security programs such as unemployment insurance and welfare. And here's something alarming. Interest payments alone make up a significant chunk, 13% of our spending. That means we're not even buying goods or services with that money. We're just paying to service the debt we already owe. At this point, the solution might seem obvious. Earn more, spend less, or ideally, do both. But here's the problem. None of these options are politically popular. Ask Americans if they want to pay higher taxes. Most will say no. Ask if we should cut Social Security, Medicare, or military spending. Again, most will say no. So politicians, who ultimately depend on public approval, are reluctant to make hard choices. The result? Kicking the can down the road. Deficits continue, debt rises, and we pass the problem on to future generations. This isn't just a domestic issue. The US dollar is the world's reserve currency, and treasury bonds are held by institutions across the globe. If the United States were to default or even delay payments, it would send shockwaves through international markets. Our credibility, built over decades, could be damaged in a matter of days. Moreover, if foreign countries begin to doubt the US's ability to manage its finances, they may start dumping US bonds. That would cause interest rates to spike, the value of the dollar to plummet, and inflation to soar. So, what's the way forward? Is there a cheat code to escape this? Some economists propose growing our way out of debt. That means boosting GDP enough that the debt to GDP ratio shrinks over time. But with sluggish growth and rising interest rates, that's easier said than done. Others suggest modern monetary theory, which argues that governments that print their own currency can borrow indefinitely. But critics warn this leads to hyperinflation, currency devaluation, and eventual collapse. Still others call for balanced budget amendments, spending caps, or debt breaks, like those used in Germany or Switzerland. But again, political will is lacking. Ultimately, there is no magic fix. The only real solution involves fiscal discipline, a sustained, honest effort to align spending with revenue over the long term. Ladies and gentlemen, let me leave you with this. Debt, by itself, is not inherently bad. Borrowing can be useful when it's done responsibly and when the borrowed funds are invested wisely. But when debt grows out of control, faster than income, faster than growth, it becomes a burden, a liability, a threat. The US has faced great challenges before, and it has always risen to meet them. But solving the debt crisis will require something rare: truth, transparency, and long-term thinking in an age of short-term politics. We owe it to ourselves, and more importantly, to the next generation, to take this issue seriously, because the longer we wait, the fewer options we'll have. If you found this video eye-opening, now's the time to be aware. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode that matters. And most importantly, share this video with someone who needs to hear it, because understanding the problem is the first step to changing it. This is Be Aware, where knowledge is power and truth has no filter. Stay informed, stay sharp, and as always, be aware.